Today, we're covering accounting automation. It's a big reason why a lot of companies choose Jobman rather than have to change their accounting platform, potentially to an inbuilt accounting software, which a lot of ERPs do offer. You can utilize the accounting software you're used to, and of course that your bookkeepers and accountants use every day, integrate it seamlessly into Jobman, and most importantly, gain the best out of that automation and remove a lot of double handling, which is what we're really there to do. So a couple of big areas for the automation involve the invoicing and bills automation, connecting and ensuring that your accounting platform is set up correctly. We also want to cover the benefits of what Jobman and the accounting sync are good for and what they're not good for. I think that's sometimes just as important as understanding both sides of the coin, and of course the contact and staff sync. So by today, or the end of today, it should be fairly short and sweet. We should be able to get through this pretty quickly, but I'll hopefully divulge as much information as possible around this area of the platform. But we hope that you'll understand the benefits of our accounting integration, definitely some use cases to improve automation in your business, take away some of that double handling and manual choke points, especially from an administrative side. Doesn't matter the size of your business. There's always a big part of the manufacturing process is everything to do around the manufacturing process. So we definitely want to help companies with that. Still gain some transparency, some visibility in the software, but also save a lot of time and remove double handling, which usually results also in mitigating the risk of human error, which is very important, especially when it comes to numbers. Numbers are very important to your company. So data-driven software such as Jobman wants to do its best to really make sure you're always getting the numbers right. And of course, your accounting has to be right. So we've got you covered there. We certainly want to cover where Jobman versus your accounting platform are best used. There are crossovers between the two platforms, and quite often there's some questions clients have around why doesn't Jobman do this, and why does my accounting platform do that, and shouldn't your platform do this as well? So we definitely want to cover off those instances and where Jobman is definitely or most suited to get the benefit out of that integration rather than replacing your accounting software. And of course, understand the role of syncing of contacts, staff, invoices, and timesheets, all of which are optional as well. And that's a good thing good area to start with when discussing the automation and integration of Jobman. Is the first thing to note is that each of those four areas are optional. So when connecting up your accounting platform, you can choose which of those you wish to benefit from. For example, if your company currently uses a very good one-touch payroll system that's linked to, say, a Bundy clock system, where people just come in and say, I'm here, and then I'm gone, and within that time frame, the software that particular platform is built to handle like their breaks and all that sort of HR involvement for their payroll, then absolutely you don't have to sync up Jobman's timesheets. Jobman will still perform its tasks. Jobman's still going to come in and allow the team to measure operational time versus operations. It can, in fact, be used for an attendance system, which is why we have timesheet syncing. But if you have a better system already, there's no need to sync that up. So you can definitely not choose to have that sync live and still gain the benefit from the contacts, staff syncing, invoicing, and purchase order bills, for example. Who do we connect with? We connect primarily with accounting platforms that have excellent APIs. The three best of which are Xero, MyOb, and Intuit QuickBooks Online. Please note you'll need to connect Jobman to the online versions of these. So if you have a historic Reckon, for example, which is a computer-based software, one of Intuit's first releases into accounting platform, we're unable to connect to that because both platforms need to be cloud-based and have an API. I'm not actually sure if Reckon still supports that program. You probably have already updated to QuickBooks Online, but it is worth noting. And same with MyOb. If you use the MyOb desktop version, in order to connect via the APIs, you will need to connect to the online cloud version. Now, one of the good things about MyOb that I am aware of is that you can, in fact, use the desktop version. And within the desktop version, they have access to MyOb Essentials, which is the cloud version, and they keep each other in sync. So there's not a problem there. If you prefer to use the desktop version, you can still connect up via your company account to Jobman. and utilize the benefits of our automation while still maintaining your desktop version. There will just be a bit of a lag in the syncing because, as you can imagine, the information has to go from your desktop to MyOps Cloud Service, and then from MyOps Cloud Service to Jobman and back again, and so forth. So but those are the main three. I imagine there will be more to come in the future as well. And these three, however, represent the majority of the manufacturing clients we certainly deal with in Australia, New Zealand, and around the world. So it's a pretty good coverall. Quick note, just for transparency, currently the QBO integration is for contacts and invoices only, including purchase order bills. Staff and timesheets will come. But again, everything in the development world takes a bit of time to cover off, and depending on the strength of the API we're integrating with will depend on the time frame around that. So Xero, for example, has a phenomenal API. It was one of the first we put together, which makes it an excellent program to sync seamlessly with Jobman. So what are the benefits of the integration? The main benefits, if I really had to nail it down to one sentence, is to save your company double handling. If you're already utilizing a platform and you've chosen Jobman to do, for example, your quoting, Jobman is very good at handling your quoting into your job management, your capacity understanding, and by the same token, we also handle your catalog, your inventory, and your inventory management. It makes sense then that you should not have to come into our platform and perform all those things, and we then can't utilize that data. So what Jobman does in essence is it takes that data and says, well, hey, if you can produce a quote, you can make an invoice in our system, and then we can submit that invoice up to your accounting platform. Same with purchase order bills. We're handling your purchase ordering because we're your inventory management program. We can also then take that information, and rather than someone then have to go into your accounting platform and double data enter and create invoices and create purchase order bills, we can send that information up to your accounting platform, which obviously saves a lot of time, frees up people's time to do more proactive tasks in your business, but also primarily reduces human error because the information is all being handled in one place and then sent to another platform. All of the double checkpoints that you would do as part of that process are going to happen in Jobman anyway. So reducing that human error is a big one. And I know any business that can take advantage of that has a lot of benefit, especially to your productivity and your profitability. One of the other great benefits of the integration is, of course, the timesheet automation. Jobman's primary role in your business as part of improving your productivity is to understand your estimate versus actuals when it comes to labor operations. So you're quoting on operations, whether it be part of products or as part of your quoting process inside a manufacturing conversation you're having with a client. We want to know, once that job is actually done, did the estimates meet the actual? Were we on board with those times? Did it take longer? Did it take less? Where can we improve? Do we need to increase our quoting to account for the fact that we're always going on over in time? Because those timesheets are being filled out by your staff constantly with their productive hours, whether they be dealing with leads or jobs in the system or administration tasks or office tasks, we can measure that time, which means with the smarts in our payroll integration, we can then send that time across to your accounting platform and give you the best of both worlds. So you're getting both the measurement of time, estimate versus actual for your reporting, and also take up the majority of the timesheets. Now, it's important to note that part of that process will mean, obviously, that your team is going to have to also allocate time to non-productive tasks. And Jobman is geared to be able to set that up with generic jobs, things like unpacking trucks, sweeping the floor, general admin, emails, etc. And they become easy, replicatable tasks that the team can measure time against to make sure their timesheet is being filled out, which really takes a lot of headache work out of your business, especially if you're a small to medium manufacturer. I know that some companies would spend upward of about 3 hours a week on payroll. So if we can give you the majority of the information, it's just a matter of tweaking. I'm going to save you a lot of time there. The last one, which is an interesting side benefit of having an integration service, is the ability to hold invoices. So what I mean by that is you can build invoices in Jobman and they sit in a status called drafts. And only when you're ready then to send that invoice out to the client would you submit it to your accounting software. Now, it seems like a subtle thing, but the truth and reality in most countries is the way the taxation works is based on what they call visible income. So if you start a lead, say in January, and part of that lead process is you quote and estimate, and then you would create what's called a deposit invoice ready for that client to pay so you can move forward for the job. If it takes 3 months for the client to come back to you and turn around and say, "Yep, absolutely, we're going to move ahead. We'll pay that invoice now," and that invoice has been sitting in your accounting platform, as far as your taxable income goes, even though you have not sent that money or received that money, especially in Australia, the ATO doesn't care. It's considered part of your your primary income, even though you haven't even sent out the invoice or received it yet. So by being able to sit those invoices in what we call a draft status, you have the visibility of potential income in the software, but you've not yet pushed it to the platform that's going to report to your I guess your taxation system. I use the ATO as the example in Australia, but of course this is the same in most countries in the world. So it's just a side benefit of having that information, obviously in one place, but also not necessarily having to push that information up to your accounting platform. Now, one of the important denotions here is to understand the difference between our two platforms, why it is that Jobman simply doesn't build an accounting platform into our software. And I know a lot of companies do. A lot of companies produce ERPs and they produce an inclusive end-to-end system. And there's two primary reasons for it. Number one, Jobman is your ERP. It's designed to improve your processes, your productivity, and your profitability. Your accounting platform is designed to handle receivable of payments, the payment of bills, taxation, payroll, profit and loss reporting at a very high level. There are some crossovers there, obviously. As Jobman is working out your productive hours and your job costing, it's utilizing default charge out rates. We have your material costing coming into your job, so we can do estimate versus actual. So there is a lot of crossover there, but fundamentally the two platforms are designed to give you two different results. Jobman is designed to give you productivity reporting and understand where you can improve your processes and, of course, streamline those processes. And the information is live. So it's designed to give you that information all the time. So as you're running jobs and work orders through the system, you can see that benefit and then make those changes and start immediately seeing a return of investment on your platform. Accounting software, generally speaking, is designed more around a hierarchical view. It's designed to look at the top level and say, hey, over the course of the year, our expenses were X. We brought in Y amount of income. Here's the difference. Here's how much tax we pay. Here's the number. Now, that's fantastic. It's absolutely what that platform's designed for. But one of the downsides to that is, generally speaking, until you get to the end point of the year, so to speak, it's hard to then break those numbers down and understand where you can make those benefits. And obviously that's why you have accountants, and they form such an important functionary role in your business, so they can then have those discussions with you about where you can become more profitable. But they're looking at a tax consideration level. Jobman's looking at a real manufacturing level. So that's the important two distinctions between the two platforms. And the foundational reason why is simply because, or why we haven't built one, I should say, simply because, as the old adage goes, you should never try and wear two shoes on the same foot. And it's very, very true. If you are very good at something, and Xero and MYOB and QBO are amongst the best in the world at building accounting platforms, their entire business focus is building the best software possible for you to handle your accounting processes. And we are on the opposite foot, doing the best in the world we can to provide you with the best platform to handle your job management, your lead management, your CRM, et cetera, right through to inventory management, job costing. Any focus that would be taken away from that to build an accounting platform would make this not as good. And I've seen it hundreds of times over. You'll often hear this phrase where people say, oh, yeah, I took on an ERP platform and it had accounting software in it. And either it's a really good accounting software and not such a good ERP platform, or it's a really good ERP platform and a very bad accounting software. So that definitely, that's the reason why we don't do that. We want to connect out and still give you the benefit of having that integration without obviously then trying to do too much. And plus it makes it a lot easier to integrate. If you don't have to go and set up your entire accounting platform in a new ERP, you can concentrate on getting the ERP set up, get that utilized for your business, start seeing return while still using the same accounting software you've been using for years. or if you change to a new one. So it's important to understanding it's similar to our other integration services we offer with like CAD companies, and cloud file storage. Obviously we could build all those things, but those platforms, that massive businesses designed to provide a solution to your company, and they're very good at it. They've been doing it a long time. So we would rather give you the benefit and create like a central hub. Jobman really is a central hub for your business. I think I've mentioned this before. And then we connect out to the other platforms that make sense for your business. So what I want to do is just have a bit of a look in the software around some of the areas where that benefit will lie and where you can utilize it, and how that can then best improve your use case of Jobman. Now, it's very important to note straight off the bat that outside of two areas of the software, when you first connect up to your accounting platform, we will not bring through a lot of historic data, and it is intentional. We're not going to suddenly download 100 years of invoicing and purchase order bills directly into the platform. We are there to help you move forward and create links from established information inside Jobman going forward. So as you create new invoices and purchase order bills in the system, obviously we'll link those up to your accounting software, and then you get the benefit of a lot of automation. But we're not going to just bring down everything that your accounting platform already has, which is actually a very good thing for your business, especially for companies that are still considering Jobman as their solution. Last thing we want to do is connect up, bring down all their historic, very, very sensitive financial data, and then you turn around and make a decision that this isn't the right platform for you, and you're like, well, what happens to all that stored financial data you now have? That's not our purview. What we want to do is we want to create a system in which we can benefit you via automation without touching your historic data. So that's what we've done. Now, the two exceptions to that, of course, are contacts and staff. So one of the big primary benefits of connecting out to your accounting platform in the early stages of Jobman, of course, is we will pull through all of your contacts and staff. So that's a good initial setup win, ready to go. Further to that, moving forward, we will also then keep these contacts up to date with each other to make sure that you're always getting the right information at the right time. So this is very important for a lot of companies to make sure that they know when they update primary people in the system, or they add details that they can, moving forward, add their contacts into Jobman, and we'll send them up. And I'll use Xero as my example for today. To Xero to keep that information line. So again, you don't have to double data enter. The primary benefit of entering that contact into Jobman, of course, is we go a little bit further. We're a CRM. We have a CRM built into our system. So what you can utilize this for, or the contact management system for, far outweighs what you can do with it inside Xero. So inside our platform, you can have multiple contact persons, whereas in an accounting platform, there's generally only one contact person. The contact person is who pays the bill or who you're paying the bill to. An accounts email, for example. So we allow you to put multiple contact persons in. We allow you to also keep this information up to date, and then in turn, we will transfer that information. Now, there's two areas where we don't sync contact data, and it's important to note. The first one is the primary email address. If there is no primary email address for the contact inside Jobman or Xero, obviously we will tell each other. But if you modify that primary email address inside your accounting platform, it won't override Jobman. And the reason is pretty straightforward. In most companies, there will be a primary person that you deal with from a CRM management point of view, who you're doing the business with. But from an accounting point of view, generally most companies have an accounts email. So that accounts email is designed to be who you either pay the bills to or who you send the bills to be paid. And that's very much the purview of the accounting platform. So we don't want to touch that information. We don't want to override Jobman and send that information back up to Xero and keep changing it every time you change the primary email. So that's the first area where we won't sync that data, but obviously that makes sense and it's intentional. And the second thing we don't do is we don't tell each other around archived and deleted contacts. And again, this is very intentional. If you have a contact in Xero, for example, let's say you take the team out for a dinner to a local restaurant, and obviously you pay the bill. The next day when you go back into work, you need to put that receipt versus a company to, claim the expense and put the payment there. So you might enter that restaurant into Xero. Now, obviously that contact's going to come into Jobman because they sync seamlessly with each other. But it's not a contact you're planning on doing business with. So for the sake of cleanliness, you may decide to go in there and archive that contact in Jobman. We're not going to archive the contact in Xero for you because you still need the contact in Xero to do its job and have a reference for which to pay that bill. Similarly, the other way around, you may end up with a lot of contacts in Jobman that are relative to your leads coming in and new business production possibilities and opportunities that you're getting. And many of those leads won't pan out. So whilst we'll sync them up to Xero for you, they may not be used in the short term or the future to do business with. So you don't actually need them in Xero. You're not going to put your bills to them. So if you do go in and decide to archive that contact in Xero, similarly, it won't come in and remove them from Jobman because there's still relevant information in Jobman for that contact. You might have created a lead for them. You've got some reporting processes around starting. They actually feed your numbers for your win-loss rates, et cetera, et cetera. So they won't decontact each other from there. So the reason I bring that up is because quite often we get questions around some of the error messaging that you may pick up on the platform. And that's one of the most common ones where you've synced Jobman with Xero, and then someone's gone in and made a change on one of the systems, maybe archived or deleted a contact in Xero, and then you try and push some information up from Jobman, and it says, yep, it's fine, we've completed it, but we've given you a warning just to let you know this information hasn't gone across. The reason we give you those warnings is so that you can then make a decision how you want to move forward. Is that contact someone that is going to need to actually be someone you do in the future for the business? Are you going to do future business with them and you weren't thinking you were going to, and you've cleaned up your Xero, for example, and then that information's now gone? That's one of those use cases where it's going to warn you and say, hey, we can't push this invoice up because you've actually archived the contact in Xero. So that's an important thing to know. Now, one of the great things about the platform is you can generally tell when contacts have successfully sunk with each other. I think that's the word, synced, sunk, not sure. So you can make sure that things are relevant. And of course, you can search that information. And one of the ways you can do that is using the 3 dots on the contacts, and same with the invoicing and bills, is you can see and make sure that they have linked. And you can see here that if you need to unlink them because you may want to archive them and you don't want data sending to each of those contacts, or that you've got a new contact, for example, in the company, and you've changed over and you just don't want people sending that information through anymore accidentally, you can unlink them, and now that data won't send to each other. So that's super important. One thing that is also extremely important to know is that accounting software integrations are extremely particular. They are done and managed in such a way that the data has to be extremely precise. So everything from capitals to spacing to placement of terminology is considered unique identifier, and it's done intentionally. It's done to protect your business. What I mean by that is if I had a contact in Jobman, Asgard, and it's all in capital letters, and I went into Xero and someone, instead of searching to see if that contact existed already, went in and just thought that wasn't there. So they added a new contact and they went capital A, lowercase, SGARD, that will sync down to Jobman, because the two systems talk to each other and their unique differences between the two names. So just worth double checking once you connect up. Anytime if you want to go and create something, this information sort of syncs across. So it should be there. There should be no need to add those details in either side. But if you can't see it, just do a quick run and a check, and maybe check your archives and delete it. It's worth unarchiving a contact inside either system rather than creating them from scratch to stop that double data entry. Of course, if it does happen, it's not a problem. You can archive it in the system, maybe change the name so it's not uniquely the same anymore, put archived in front of it, and then archive the contact, and that'll remove your double ups and duplications. And then so long as these two are linked, it's fine. Any bills or invoices you send going forward won't be an issue. So that's the first area that's very important. And the other thing that I'll quickly mention is that Jobman uses what's called a live sync information service. So that means every hour or so, it's going through and it's looking for changes in your system, and it's going to sync up to your accounting platform, and it'll check your staff, your contacts, your invoices, and your purchase order bills, as well as timesheets. So if you've turned all the options on, it will go in, it will check that information, and it will live sync. Now, it also makes changes when you make an update to the system. So if, for example, you submit a new invoice from Jobman to Xero, it will be looking for that in the background. And if it picks up that change, it will normally do a sync automatically, assuming all your setup is correct and there's no problems. Then that's not an issue. And you can always see those logs here in the system. Now, if something doesn't feel like it's synced up quick enough, might have just be waiting for the next cycle to come through, and you need some data to go up to your accounting software immediately. Maybe you want to push a bill so you can get it out to the client, get it paid. You can create a manual sync, and that will help force that issue. And this exists in contacts, invoicing, and staff. You can push those syncs through. So plenty of opportunity there. And then we run what's called a historic record, letting you know, just in case there's any changes to your system, there's always a record in the system, so you can double check, make sure that your last sync has worked and the contact has come up, and also any errors, any issues that may have come about from the sync. That information will be here, so you can make those changes and make sure they go forward properly. So that's the first area, keeping your contacts up to date. Absolutely fantastic. Save you a lot of double handling. But the main purpose, a lot of people utilize the integration for then is the invoicing. And this is invoicing to lead or contact or job. And then, of course, purchase order bills for when you create purchase orders. So a couple of really important things to note about the submission process here. When you first create an invoice in Jobman, and let's say you create a quote and you create a 20% invoice, deposit invoice for that quote, and we've got all the smarts in there. We can break it down by item section if that's how you like to do it. If you filled that information on the invoice, it will come across, or you can simply add line items in, however you normally handle your process. Jobman is designed to handle. Now, when this is first created, you'll notice that Jobman utilizes what's called a placeholder number. So it's a number here that's simply designed by Jobman just to give your invoice or bill a number. It's not relevant. Your accounting software is definitely in charge when it comes to your invoicing numbers. They have the historic records. They're the ones that are doing it all the time moving forward. So Jobman's job is not to override that process. So what we do is we create a placeholder. When it's submitted, it will go up to your accounting software, and the first thing your accounting software will do will be override our number. So we'll override our number with your actual latest invoice number, so you're always keeping that up to date. And you can make sure, again, that they're linked. You can see here, I can click View in Xero, and it will take me directly across to the bill in Xero if I have access to Xero in the company. And you can see this information on both ends. Once this live link is created, that's it, nice and easy from there. It's a two-way connection. So when this invoice is approved in your accounting software and then goes out to the client, it will change the status approved automatically. And then when the client pays the invoice or partially pays the invoice, that information will come back into Jobman and update the status to paid. So once the connection is made, it's a very good system. It'll just keep each other updated and ready to go. Now, there are some gotchas around that. Obviously, the way in which accounting platforms and ERPs work on their statuses are slightly different, in that in some areas of a status, you can make changes to an invoice, and others you can't intentionally. If you send an invoice out to a client and they've paid, you don't want someone to be able to come in and modify that invoice. So Jobman works the same way. We have statuses that control what you can and can't do. And if you want to learn more about that, check out our docs, and all of that information's in the settings to make sure that works for you. But ultimately, once the two are linked up with each other, if you make changes in one, it will make changes in the other, unless it's sitting in a status that cannot then be modified. So that's an important note. Second important note, and probably one of the most common questions we get, is, okay, Jobman, you can create invoices. Why can't I just send that invoice from Jobman to the client? Great question. Absolute fantastic question. And it really goes back to what I was saying before, the role of our platforms. Our platform is not designed to replace your accounting software. So inside your accounting software, you've built all of your payment options. You might have linked up to Stripe, for example. You've got your BSB, you've got your live links to FBOS payments. All that's been set up in your accounting platform because that's what it's designed to do. So we don't have all those things in Jobman. Your accounting platform also usually these days will include some form of ability to reconcile payments as they come down from your account, your bank account, or your FPOS or your Stripe, whatever you utilize for your payment services. will be handled in your accounting platform. None of those are connected into Jobman again. So that's really the job of the accounting platform, is to send and make payments and then report that to the ATO or your taxation department. So that's its job. Our job is to save you double handling. We don't want you to have to then, if you're producing your quotes and your leads and your purchase orders in Jobman, we don't want you then have to manually send that information to another department who then has to upload that information into Xero or accounting platform and then send it out to the client. That's where the most likelihood of mistakes will come in. And this is probably something, if you've not utilized a platform before like Jobman, to benefit from this automation, that you've seen those mistakes, and those mistakes cost real money. So that's our job. So we can send the invoice up, we submit it. Once it's sitting in this draft status, you'll notice that it's ready to go. As soon as I hit the submit button, assuming all the statuses are set up correctly, it will just submit to my accounting software and the changes will be made from there. Purchase orders are a little bit different. You can override the purchase order bill numbers in Jobman and they will send them up. Obviously, purchase order bill numbers are decided by your supplier, not your accounting platform. So that does work. We also have reference points in here, but that's why we send the information up. It's the accounting platform's job to go then either get paid or pay, which makes a lot of sense. Now, with that said, we do have invoicing templates built into the software. We do have the ability to email out of the software. So for a lot of companies, they do utilize the ability to send invoices out of our platform at like a pro forma level. The ability to come in, send that invoice out of Jobman to the client and just say, hey, just so you're aware, next steps for our lead process will be this 20% deposit based on the inclusions you've chosen so far. And when you're ready to move forward, let us know. So they've got a copy, they know what they're up against, and they're ready to go. And once they let you know they're ready to go, then you send the actual invoice out of Xero or your accounting platform to the client ready to get paid. Second reason, which is equally as important, is in a lot of manufacturing companies or a lot of businesses, full stop, there is a separation between the management team and the accounting team. And it's very, very important separation. Inside your accounting platform sits payroll information, taxation information, sensitive company profit and loss information. That's not information you want widely known across your staff. So you have trusted members of your business. It might be yourselves as the owners of the business, or it might be someone employed within your business to manage and control the accounting side. They have access to your accounting platform. People who can create invoices and from quotes and purchase orders bills might sit in separate departments in your organization, and they might not necessarily, they might be one and the same, but they might not necessarily be one and the same. And in fact, in a lot of businesses, they're not. We can trust people to create purchase orders. That's their job, is to purchase order materials and deal with suppliers. But their job is not to then go into Xero and find out what everyone's getting paid. So the integration, whilst benefiting automation, is also designed to keep that separation in your business. Now, in a lot of instances, it is one and the same. The person going into Jobman, once the lead process is finished and starting to create out the invoices, 2020, or however your payment structure works, is also the person that will then submit them up and authorize them out of the accounting platform. That's fine. But in order to protect business integrity and make sure that we're not doing anything wrong, we have intentionally separated that information. But thanks to the joy of APIs, it's now very easy to utilize, very easy to set up, and very easy to get the benefit out of, which is good. So purchase order bills and contacts, and invoicing will come across. They'll link where there's relevant information. You can turn these columns on to get more information about what you're producing in here. And as I said, we do have our own templates in there, so you can see how these are being presented, but ultimately the bill or the invoice will be handled inside your accounting platform and then come back and tell Jobman what's going on. So the last part to that, if you choose, is also the syncing of staff. Now, there's a number of primary benefits to staff syncing in Jobman. Number one, obviously keeping the details up to date is a good one. So making sure that we both have details set in both systems that are keeping each other up to date all the time. Just saves double handling, saves error handling, saves problems down the future. Make sure that all those your staff are lined up and ready to go. And the second part to that, of course, is the attendance or the timesheeting entries that you can make. Now, obviously, this is a demo site, so I haven't put a lot of hours in here, but just to give you an example, if you, as your staff, measure their productive time in the platform and are actually doing tasks and finishing things, we are building what's called an attendance report. And as I said, it's very easy to build generalized operations that can be then utilized to fill out the rest of their timesheet. So time spent non-productively, or not, I shouldn't say non-productively, like unpacking your truck is important. If you don't unpack the truck, you don't have the stock. You can't produce the stuff, it doesn't go out the door. What I mean by non-productive time is I mean non-productive time versus lead or job. So all that time spent with emails, administration, office management, phoning people, and on the manufacturing side, cleaning, deburring issues, unpacking trucks, all that sort of stuff. And you can get as complicated or as simple as you want with the system. So a lot of companies simply have just one generalized job built, very easy to remember number. Usually they steal the first one, 0001, something like that. They build a general flow in there, one status, just a couple of tasks for the team to measure against. And those tasks will just never be completed. So someone comes in the morning, if they're a kiosk user, they enter their PIN. Yep, I'm here, attendance. Just hit the button, no problems. It'll start measuring my time. And then the great thing about Jobman is the minute I actually start measuring my time versus a task or operation from my agenda screen. So if I come in here and I was already logged into a particular task, say attendance, the minute I actually start measuring time against this, it will log me off attendance and it will start measuring its time on there, and then add those two numbers together to fill out the attendance sheet. And then of course, when I go to lunch, I pause whatever I'm doing, whether it be a general operation or a standard operation, come back, start again, fill up my day. So it's a very good, clean system at getting you the best of both worlds. It will take care of the majority of needs of your HR and your payroll management, whilst at the same time also giving you the important data that you're looking for from your ERP, which is your estimated versus actual productive time, which is huge. So all of that is absolutely possible. Some companies do find using a Bundy clock system or software that supports simplified time and attendance to be more beneficial to the company. They might have a lot of staff. Makes sense just to have like a set and forget system. So long as someone says they're there, they're going to get paid for their 7.6 hours. And then they use Jobman only for the productive time measurement. So they get the best of both worlds. Not a problem. Simply just don't choose timesheet syncing when you connect up your accounting platform. And it is important to note that if you have done that previously and you want to remove it, it's very easy. You can disconnect the platforms and off you go. Something that's worth noting about those recent tasks, those generic tasks, is once you put a little bit of time against them the first time, they will always appear in the recent task list. So it's very easy for your staff, whether they be on the dashboard of the office user mode or the kiosk mode, to be able to come in here and continuously use those operations. So that's fine. Now, where do all the settings for this setup sit in the system? You've got a couple of areas. The primary one, obviously, being under settings accounting. And you'll always know if you are connected to your accounting partner because it will be ticked here. Like I said, right now, I've got the automatic sync on this set up to contacts and staff only. If I were to disconnect this, oops, that didn't work out to plan. It's booted me out. Obviously, I've been letting that sit there for just a little bit too long. But if I disconnect those two sites and I want to update and change to also automate my bills and my purchase orders and invoicing, this is how I do it. So I can come in here, make that modification, then reconnect to my accounting software, and off you go. So it's also useful probably to note in here who you want the primary notification emails to go to when there are problems with the accounting setup. For a lot of companies, that will be the person who's setting up the software. For a lot of companies, it'll also be the admin or accounts team, the people who most likely know the information as to why that error is occurring. So it's an important thing to set up at this point and make sure that's ready to go. You'll also notice two very interesting fields here: contact customer type and supplier contact type. These are designed to save I guess, a lot of complication in your system. So this is one of those interesting areas where an accounting platform, whilst utilized by a lot of companies before they get a job management system to take care of some basic CRM stuff and sort of purchase ordering and inventory, they're not designed for it. They don't do it very well, but it kind of does get you across the line when you're first starting up. One of the things that's interesting is when they refer to your contacts, there are only two default types. They're either a customer or a supplier. It doesn't matter what accounting platform, it's all the same. So a customer is someone you invoice, and a supplier is someone who invoices you. In Jobman, being that you're a CRM, you have multiple contact types. So you can go in and create, I could have 52 different versions of my customers, for example. I could have residential, I could have private, I could have builder, I could have commercial, the list goes on. And you breaking down those contacts into those different types is extremely useful to you from a reporting point of view when it comes to lead and job reporting. Knowing who those contacts are, where you're doing the most business and where it's most profitable. It's one of the benefits of our system. Ultimately, though, your accounting platform doesn't care. You can call them whatever you like. Ultimately, when the API syncs those two contacts, it's simply going to break them into two types. Either it's a customer or a supplier. Either you invoice them or they invoice you. Now, I know there are accounting platforms out there, and Xero is one of those examples. We have an ability to create what's called a tag. It's like a semi-CRM management thing where you can kind of call a customer a thing. We don't sync that information because it's not true information, and Xero ultimately doesn't care about it in its API. When we link contacts, they only fall into one of those two categories. And that's all Xero wants to hear from us, and that's all Xero tells us in the background. So one of the benefits of this is when you first connect up, or if you've already connected, you can obviously disconnect and make this change if you need to. You can tell Jobman when Xero sends you a customer contact type, by default, what is your majority of customer archetype? Is it residential? Is it private? Is it account? Is it, walk-in, whatever you call them? That means every time Xero syncs down a customer, they'll by default have the contact type, whatever you set here. Same with supplier, because in Jobman, you can set up multiple supplier types. You can have supplier board, supplier hardware, supplier, et cetera, just so you can break down your contacts a little bit easier, better filtration of information. Again, ultimately, your accounting software doesn't care. It's going to just call them all a supplier. So when you bring them down by default, you just tell Jobman, what do you want them to be? Now, the good thing about our systems, obviously, is that inside Jobman, then you can mass upgrade those types. So I can come in here, and if I need to change the type, I can do that. That's not a problem. So even though by default, Xero sending everyone down as a residential client, I can come in here and change those three, for example, to architect or builder. So everything you would expect from our end that you can handle as part of a CRM, we can then do. So it's not a problem there. Other areas to note in the accounting setup is codes. You'll often see references to codes. For example, tax types, depending on your region and your state. All of these codes, names not so important, but the codes are the important part. These are the information you need to pull from your accounting software. So if you're seeing error messaging around a tax type not syncing or a bill not syncing because of this particular error, that's probably the most likely cause. Again, nice and easy. Go into your settings, go into your accounting, go to tax types, double check these codes, and you can update and change them, because these, again, are being managed and controlled by your accounting platform. We do our best when you sign up and you connect and you choose your accounting platform, whether it be Xero or MyOp or QBO. We will set up some of this information for you based on the base setups that we know from all accounting platforms. But obviously, accounting platforms, again, are very unique to the user. You will have made changes over the years. So it's important that if you're seeing those error messages, not to worry too much, just to read them. Normally, the API returns are very good. Find the area, there's a lot of documentation in the system, make the changes. You might need to add some codes or change some codes, add in some pay rates for your staff, for example, and off you go. And it's important to note the reason why we link on code is because we don't pull through the information. So one of the good things about our software is whilst we link your staff for pay rates, so we're able to tell your accounting platform, hey, Johnny and Sammy, Johnny's worked 8 hours normal time, 2 hours overtime. Sammy's worked 6 hours normal time, 4 hours overtime. They are connected to pay rates. Those pay rates are in your accounting platform. So we can tell your accounting platform who the staff member is, the amount of time where they've worked, the amount of time based on their reward, but we don't actually have the information as to what they get paid in Jobman. So again, nice and secure, separated. Even if you accidentally changed a permissions role and gave your management staff access to the settings area, and they were able to go into pay rates in Jobman, all they're going to see is codes, assembler 201, for example. It's meaningless to them. They don't actually know what those staff are being paid unless they have access to your accounting software, which is what your accounting software is there for. So Absolutely fantastic. Nice and easy, very straightforward, a lot of documentation, and you should find it fairly easy to work through. Same with the syncing error messaging. If you see something that says completed with warnings, it means the sync's fine. It's happened. Jobman's just doing its best to let you know where there might be a settings change you might need to make, or something's changed in your accounting software that we now can't reconcile with. It's not a major issue. Just if you don't want to see the error messaging, fix up whatever the problem is, and you should move forward. And if you get a particularly weird error message, shoot it through to us and we'll check it out and try and let you know what's going on. Obviously, we are limited by the information that the accounting APIs send back to us. We do our best, but ultimately we don't have access to your accounting software. We don't control Xero. We don't control Mile. That's their world. Software is very smart. APIs are very smart. We can do a lot with each other, but there are limitations. If they don't tell us what the error message means, it might return some weird code. You'll look at it and go, I have no idea what that means. We might not know either. But we are certainly always working to make sure that that gets better and better over time, and pushing those companies to improve their API returns so that they can then give us more information, so we can give you more information and help you move forward. But as a general rule of thumb, it's a pretty seamless system once connected correctly. You might need to do some tweaks in your settings just to make sure it sets up properly. And then moving forward from there, you will get a lot of benefit from automation, time saving, but most importantly, reduction in human error, which is a big one, especially when it comes to numbers. Numbers are ultimately the cornerstone of your business. So look, I think that's a pretty good cover through. Obviously, I didn't want to dive in and spend 45 minutes just talking about settings setup. I think the documentation is pretty good there. There's some new documents being released at the moment around FAQs to cover commonly asked questions around accounting syncs, because I know this is certainly a big one for a lot of companies. They connect up, they want to make sure everything's working right, where to worry and where not to worry, and easy fixes to get around some of those areas. So keep your eyes on those. And as I said, if you run into any major issues, obviously let us know. But for the most part, aside from their platforms being down, it's a pretty good system. And it does happen occasionally. I think it's worth mentioning is that we do live in a technological world. From time to time, things do go down. It's unfortunate, but that may happen. You might get a 500 error come back in. It just means that right now their servers aren't responding. There's not much we can do about it. Don't worry too much. You can check their status pages. Once they're back up and running, we'll resync your data and keep moving forward. But like most platforms, I imagine they probably have a 99% uptime. So you won't encounter those problems very often. But most importantly, you'll get the benefit of automation. You get the benefit of being able to use your ERP and your accounting to the full of their maximum of their potential, and then benefit your business from there going forward. So all good. Does Jobman and Xero synced merged contacts? That's a great question. As far as I understand the integration, it should not. The point to merging in our system is that you've got two duplicate copies for whatever reason. It does happen from time to time. The idea should be that once you've merged those two, it's now sitting as one unique ID. It is always worth checking once you merge a contact, and that's part of the reason I showed that in today's webinar. Double click on those three dots once you've merged them and just make sure that the ID link is still there. Now, in the instance where you merge a linked contact to an unlinked contact, it may require a cycle refresh, which is why we also have the immediate ability to resync, just for that information to show. But that's the fastest way to tell if something is linked properly in our systems, is use those three dots, and they can be done on invoices, purchase order bills, or contacts or staff, just to make sure they're linked correctly. If you can't see that link, post a successful sync. There could be a problem with the information. And the most common problem I've seen, especially when it comes to contacts, is, like I said, the precision of information. And it can be the stupidest stuff ever. And it is very annoying, but unfortunately we have to take it as gospel as the information that's being merged across. So if you have a merged contact and one of those contacts was ALD, and in one instance it's capital letters, and in the other instance it's lowercase letters, and you merge the capital letter into the lowercase, it will now read as lowercase. If inside Xero or your accounting software, all would exist, but it's in all uppercase, unfortunately, it's going to put that duplicate back down. It's not going to link, because it's going to look at all wood, even though it's a merged contact, and say, yeah, that's lowercase. It must be different to this all wood. And you'd be amazed the number of times I've seen contacts, especially suppliers, who have names that are extremely similar. And that's why we have to do it. Spelling and capitalization and unique identifiers such as apostrophes, all that sort of stuff, we have to respect. There's no way of getting around it. So that is the instance in which case you might get a duplicate come through. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. Our recommendation is always is if you have access to both Jobman and Xero and you're doing any work around contact management, just keep them both open. Make sure they're the same. I've seen instances where staff have come down. People said, why have they duplicated? Simply because, again, it's the names are slightly different. It can be one letter out or a space is in the wrong place or something along those lines. So it's duplicated because Xero and Jobman can't, with 100% accuracy and certainty, tell each other that that contact doesn't exist. And it's better to have it being strict than loose. So to answer your question, I believe not. No, they shouldn't. They should not. They should sync the merged contact just fine, so long as they both exist in both platforms in exactly the same way. It shouldn't be an issue there, but there are some use cases where it may double up or not connect for that reason. One of the most common reasons I've seen why a contact won't sync is they've been deleted in Jobman. Now, as I said, when we delete contacts or archive contacts in Jobman and your accounting platform, we don't actually tell each other. So we don't automatically just delete or archive the contact in your other platform because for obvious reasons. However, those contacts are still linked. So commonly what happens is you might start, say you start dealing with a supplier and you enter that supplier information in. We'll just use Allwood as the example. Hopefully there's a company called Allwood out there that's thinking, why are you picking on me? I'm not picking on you, just an example, I promise. And you enter Allwood into Jobman and it syncs up to Xero. The link's created, you check 3 dots. Yep, fantastic, both linked. And then you decide not to move ahead with Allwood as a supplier. So you go, well, in the interest of cleanliness, I'm just going to archive them in Jobman. Now, it is worth noting that there is absolutely no reason to do that. Both Xero and Jobman are designed to handle a huge amount of data. There really isn't too much need to have them archived off, but I could understand if you've got Allwood the supplier and Allwood Pty Ltd the customer, that you wouldn't potentially want the team to accidentally stuff up and try and start a lead on the supplier. Because then they'll get to the invoicing process and Jobman will go, I can't invoice this person because they're a supplier. They invoice you, for example. So you might go into Jobman, you might archive them. Now, by archiving them, they have been removed from your contact list, but they still exist in your system and they're still linked to Xero. So what will happen is, let's say you don't do business, then 6 months down the track, you actually get re-engage Allwood and you decide you are actually going to give them a crack. And then someone comes into Jobman and goes searching for the name, and they can't see it because they've been archived. So what they do is they go, oh, they must not exist. So they recreate them in the system. And what happens is they recreate them, but that sync doesn't happen because the link is still, assuming that you type it exactly the same way, you don't change the name. If you change your name ever so slightly, it will create that new contact in Xero. But because they're still linked, it'll still sit there. So one of the habits I generally recommend clients get into is, if you do decide to archive a contact in Jobman and you want to keep them in Xero because they're a Xero client, such as fuel company or insurance company or something like that, not relevant to Jobman, leave the link live so that they're there, so that Xero won't keep trying to send through that contact all the time. So that makes sense. If it's someone you're not planning on doing business with, but you've created the contact and you go in and you archive them in Jobman, you archive them in Xero, I would recommend you linking them. Because if in the future, at some point that exact scenario happens and you do actually do business with them and someone goes to search, they're not going to see the deleted record. So they're just going to come in, add the new record, and it won't sync to Xero simply because it won't be linked, because Xero is already linked to a name that's exactly the same. So that's the one instance that I've seen, and it does happen from time to time, where people are like, oh, I can't sync these invoices, or this isn't working. And it's almost always because I go in and I have a look and I can see it in their that deactivated or archived area, deleted area, so to speak. And that would be why, because they're linked. So just a good habit to get into. Obviously not something everyone thinks about. But yeah, it is one of those particular instances where we've just got to be really careful, because accounting data is very sensitive and very important. And most importantly, we don't want to stuff anything up your end. We certainly don't want to be duplicating, hundreds of records into Xero. And same, you don't want Xero to come down and be duplicating a lot of information into Jobman. So we're very particular about those connections. But that's just a good pointer. If that is happening, that could be why. If you see something that is different, like you've merged a contact and it refuses to sync, absolutely do send it through to support. We'll double check it for you. As far as I know, that's the point to merging them, is if you do have a double up and there's information in one that you want in the other, you can merge them. As long as the names match perfectly, we'll resync on the next cycle and all will be good. Awesome. Okay. We currently use HubDoc to process supplier invoices. HubDoc creates the invoice in Xero and attaches the supplier's invoice. So when I process supplier invoice, can I attach the supplier invoice to the bill and have that pushed through to Xero? When I process supplier invoices through Jobman, can I attach the supplier invoice to the bill and have that pushed through to Xero? I don't believe so currently. We actually had a conversation recently with an API development company that does a lot of work with Xero and HubDoc and a lot of that side. And one of the questions, I think it's called LightSource, one of the questions they asked us was if we follow this process where we create an automated invoice in Xero, can we send that down to Jobman? And we said no. Simply because right now the protections are in place to stop historic data coming down in the software. So the short answer to that is no, unfortunately, it won't work. However, it definitely is something that we could consider in the future, creating some form of refresh where we take a particular ID and we do take just that ID down. Obviously, that would require a fair bit of development work and thought process, but I think it would be absolutely possible. And that would help companies then who want to utilize these processes be able to put things into Xero, for example, and then bring that information down, connect up to Jobman. It's not ideal. Obviously, we want you to make the connection in Jobman to stop any historic data or double ups. Now, when you process the invoice in Jobman, you can push that invoice up to Xero as a bill. And then my assumption would be you would then be able to attach via HubDoc that bill, a copy of that bill to the bill that Jobman's pushed up. That would be my assumption. I know you can't do it the other way. I don't think you can attach. I know you can't attach anything to the Jobman side because we don't have a version of HubDoc or anything like that right now, but we probably will in the future. So I know we can't push the information up, but I don't think there's anything stopping the system that I can think of where you create the purchase order bill in Jobman, link it up, sync it up to Xero, and then attach that via HubDoc to that specific bill. I can't imagine that would be an issue, unless, of course, that's not how it works. If their scanning system works in that when it scans something and wants to create it, then maybe that would be an issue. But definitely worth checking out with your accounts team or maybe your Xero support team. Double check if that's a possibility. I think it would be possible. I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't be an issue. But unfortunately, yeah, we can't send anything up via the API currently. In the future, we may be able to. Xero might open up the HubDoc API and allow us to utilize that as well and send information through it, which would be awesome. So that's one of the good things about our platform is it's forever evolving and being able to take advantage of these extra technologies as they get developed, but just not something that's available right now, unfortunately.